Hi, this is Andy. We're continuing a series of episodes on the topic of change. Back in episode 339, we talked with Katy Milkman about her book, How to Change, which provides, I think, a lot of helpful insights into the behavioral science of change. Then we talked with Gary Lloyd in episode 343 about his book, Gardeners, Not Mechanics, to get practical insights on how to lead change in organizations. But you know what? I wanted to add one more episode in the series to focus on a key aspect of what we need to do as leaders: help others to change. Peter Bregman and Howie Jacobson have written a remarkable new book entitled, You Can Change Other People, the 4 steps to help your colleagues, employees, even family up their game. Hey, did you catch that title? You can change other people. Isn't there something about that phrasing that just seems wrong? I mean, isn't it true that you can't change other people? You can only change yourself? Well, Peter and Howie are going to challenge that idea today. They'll share why changing others might just be the most important capability a leader can develop. They'll share some examples of how not to try to get someone to change. And more importantly, they'll give us a taste of what their 4 steps are and how to use them. It's a fun conversation with 2 people who are actively using these ideas every day to help people change. I can't wait to share this discussion with you. Hey, quick note, I want to invite you to join our Lead 52 family. It's a global group of leaders who are committed to improving our ability to lead and deliver. It's 52 weeks of leadership learning delivered right to your inbox, taking less than 5 minutes a week. It's all for free. Learn more and sign up at getlead52.com. Thanks. Let's jump in today's discussion with Peter and Howie about their book, You Can Change Other People. Guys, thank you for joining us on the People and Projects podcast.
Thank you so much for having us. It's really awesome to be here with you, Andy.
Hey, before we get in the book, I'd love for our listeners to learn a little bit more about the 2 of you. So, Peter, it's maybe not a fair question, but let me ask you, in what ways are you and Howie similar and different in your styles and approaches? And Howie, I'll ask you if you agree with what he says, by the way, and how those similarities and differences impacted the co-authoring of the book. All right. So, Peter, what do you think? How are you guys similar and different?
Going second is definitely safer.
Well, I think, Howie's far more handsome than I am. He's far smarter than I am. He's far more charismatic than I am. I'm trying to think of what else fits into all of those categories. So those are ways in which we're different. Howie and I mean, it's interesting. No one's asked us this question. So I'm going to just sort of, shoot off the hip here. But I think we both, first of all, really love ideas. Like, I know maybe I'll sort of talk about ways in which I think I am and that I think Howie's similar, and then Howie, you could sort of say if you are or not. You got me a little scared here. I think we both, I love ideas. I care about ideas. And I also really care about people. And the impact that I have on people. And I also really care about bringing out the best in people and to use writing and stories and teaching as a way to do that. I think we're, there's like this piece of like heart that I'm just sort of gonna sort of talk about what I like about myself. And then I think Howie reflects the best of what I like about myself. And it's actually one of the things that I like about Howie, because it actually occurs to me as you asked me this question, that one of the things I really love about our partnership is I think Howie brings out the best in me. Like, I think he brings out parts of me that I really, really love, which is, the like intellect and heart and ideas and caring of people. And I think we both have slightly offbeat humor, and ways in which we're different. I'm going to let Howie talk about the ways in which we're different.
Yeah. That's cool. And maybe how that helped and maybe hindered the co-authoring, for that matter.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Peter. That's very sweet. I mean, I have to agree with everything you said, except, maybe charismatic, not so much, but one of the things you said is like, we both love ideas. And here's a way in which you help me, Peter, is that I kind of love ideas for their own sake. And like if an idea is just like elegant and beautiful and makes sense and tells a good story, I can tend to get seduced by it, even if it doesn't actually work or it's not actually true or useful. And working with you reminds me and kind of refocuses me on, these ideas have to prove themselves in the real world. They ideas have consequences. So there's kind of an accountability to ideas that I don't naturally always come by, that you bring out in me.
I love it.
And I would say the other thing, Peter, you're a harder worker than I am, or that you have you tend towards higher standards. Like you're satisfied with things less than I am. I'm like, you know what, this chapter's fine, and I know it's not. And I count on you to say, no, it's not. So I don't have to.
That's good.
It's interesting. And what I would say, I would match you and raise you or return to you. One of the things that I think you're better at than I am is getting out that first draft. Like because I tend to be perfectionist, like just thinking about the how many versions of your bio I have sent back to you. It's like, well, I was thinking about this again last night and I made these edits, and then like I've sent it back like 4 times, just because I keep thinking about it and I keep wanting to reword a little thing here and a little thing there. Yeah. And so like maybe I'm a better editor and you're a better first drafter. Like I appreciate that, we were talking about 3 articles. And for me to write these 3 articles would probably take, 3 weeks. And you're like, yeah, I'll get them to you a day after tomorrow. I'll write those 3 articles again. And so like, that's great. Like I suddenly have something and then I can start working with it and playing with it. So I feel like that's a way in which the partnership works really nicely.
I really appreciate you guys elaborating on this one, because I feel like when we know a little bit more about the author, we have more appreciation for the output as well. And that it just the way I think some co-authored books are just kind of confusing. Like this person says this and this person said this, and you decided to go in Peter's voice, but it was a collaboration in how you did that. I thought it was just really well done. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Peter, I alluded to this in the introduction. Most of us operate under the belief that you can't change other people, right? You can only change yourself. So how about this? What is roughly true about that? I mean, I know you don't think it is true, but what is roughly true? And if anything, and why do you believe so strongly that we can change others?
Andy, I love your questions. It's like, I think you're going one direction and then you, like everybody else, and then you have a twist on it that moves in a slightly different direction, which I really love.
Thank you.
And I love the question also because I'm such a proponent of the fact that you can change other people,
right, that
I don't often get to share what I also feel, which is, both there are times when you don't want to change other people or you can't change other people. Like we didn't write you can change everybody, right, and we didn't write you can always change other people. Right. And I think there's times, I happen to have been with my 91-year-old mother this past week in Florida. She was living with us in New York, and I brought her back to her place in Florida, and I spent the week with her. And there were a number of times when I would have liked to change her for my convenience. And I was reminded, like I just sort of sat there with her and go, that's about me. That's not about her. And I don't want to change other people for me. I want to change other people for them. Like, I think the wrong time to change other people, and the way in which it doesn't work, is when you want to change other people for your convenience. Like, I'll be more comfortable when you act in a different way. But the way we've really thought about this is taking what is, premier master level coach methodology and articulating it in a way that is accessible to anybody in a very, very simple, straightforward form, where we as allies can help people make the changes that they really want to make in their lives. And that is when it's perfectly appropriate, and we still need permission to do it. And the other thing I'll say is it's it's much easier to not change other people. It's much easier. It really is easier to just say, like, you know what, I'm going to adjust myself and not engage in this conversation. And I don't mean this in a negative way, although it's hard to think of it in any other way when I'm about to use this word. It's a lazier move to say, I'm just not going to get involved. I'm not going to change other people. And I think it's the kindest, most generous thing that we can do is to help other people make changes that they're struggling with making.
So good. That's so good. When I think of that phrase, guys, what I think is, I can change myself. So that part of it is true. I can work on myself just as much as it. And I took away from your book, ultimately, I can't change other people, but I can set the conditions under which they're willing to change. And the book lays it out of how to do that. So in fact, I'm not changing them. They're changing themselves. Right? And that's kind of how I took it. So there is some truth to the statement, but we take the lazy way out of interpreting that statement, right?
Yeah. And I also think, look, the way I think about it in terms of you can change other people, that you are changing them is change is a discontinuity from the past, right? Like there's a certain pattern in the past. And when that pattern shifts or changes, then they've changed.
That's good.
And if your intervention is what catalyzes that discontinuity from the past, then you've changed them.
That's good.
And it's semantics to say, like, we could play with the semantics, and it's true. Like, I am helping other people make changes in their life. But the reality of it is there is a certain pattern. And, what's the physics thing that, without I don't know, Howie's this is one of the ways in which Howie's better than me. You're going to know exactly what the phrase is. And if not, I'm going to yell in the other room for my 16-year-old daughter who's taking physics right now. She's going to remember. But something about, like, something's not going to, everything will continue in the direction it's going unless there's an outside force. Yeah. What's the actual phrase?
It's got to be a catalyst in there somewhere.
Object in motion tend to remain in motion. Objects at rest tend to remain at rest.
Thank you. So an object in motion, unless it's impacted, by some outside force, is going to maintain, you're going to sort of stay in motion in the direction that it's going. So we're that outside force. Yeah, and you know what? We really need to be there. I've tried to use this methodology on myself, and I invented this methodology, and I've been unsuccessful at using it on myself. Like, we need each other, which is one of the things that I love about this. Like, we need each other to, like, live our fullest lives in this world. And so that's, I hope that what the book does is it helps us become catalysts to support the discontinuity from the past that people are aspiring to.
I love it. It's an empowering message. It's a practical message. It's so good. How you assert in the book that changing others, and really building on what Peter said, changing others is perhaps the most important capability a leader can develop. What do you mean by that, Howie?
Well, first of all, just in terms of scaling influence, right? So if I'm the world's best solo performer, I can get a certain amount done. But in organizations, we need alignment. We need lots of moving pieces to all work in the same direction. So if people aren't, like, my job as a leader is not to be a smarter strategist, to come up with a better strategy that people aren't going to execute or are going to trip over each other trying to execute. My job is to make sure that everybody is moving in the right direction. Right. So in that way, if I have the ability to align my team, the people who report to me, and I can give them help with the ability to align their people, this can really compound in ways that pretty much no other capability or skill can.
Yeah, I agree. We had Dr. Robert Cialdini on the podcast, and he said, if you have to say what influence really is, it's change, and we have to influence as leaders, right? That's what we do. And so it's reason why people need to read this book to understand how do we go about doing that. In fact, Peter, we'll give people a taste of the process you offer in the book on how to change other people. But first, let's do a variation of the opposite day technique you're talking about in the book. So what are some surefire ways to fail at changing other people? What comes to mind?
Well, one, as I was thinking about the conversation I was just having with you, is if we had titled the book, instead of "You Can't Change Other People," how to be the catalyst to incite someone's discontinuity from their past patterns. I'm glad that I was a little bit regretting our title, but now that I've had that conversation, I'm kind of glad that we didn't didn't title it that.
Good call. Yeah.
So, here's a surefire way. I'll give you a lot of different, in fact, I'll direct it towards Howie. Hey, Howie, I can see you standing up straighter. You're like prepared, but isn't that interesting? You're kind
Bring it on.
Yeah. But isn't that like already, like, I don't know if people are watching this or listening to this, but as soon as I said, okay, I'm going to bring this to Howie, he sort of steeled himself a little bit. Like, he put his shoulders back and he stood up. And that's precisely, like, he knows what's coming, right? That is precisely what we feel when we think someone is coming in to try to change us. And I could say, hey, Howie, I got some advice for you to, so you can get better at something. Or, hey, I got some feedback for you that I want to give you. Or look, isn't that third bowl of ice cream you've had? Are you sure you want that third bowl of ice cream? Like, you sure that's in your best interest? And, like all these, like, unsolicited advice, unrequested feedback, holier than thou. Like, I've done a lot of these meetings, and here's a way to do it where there's like a pretend support. Hey, I've run a lot of these meetings, and I've watched you struggle there a little bit. So if you ever want any advice, let me know, and I'm happy to share my great and vast wisdom with you to help you get better at this. All of these things that, or even compliments, by the way. Hey, you did that great. You got to do more of that. Like that, I really noticed you did that thing great. But by the way, I'm not going to talk about those other 4 things. So you should recognize that those things probably weren't so good, right? And so, like, you're suddenly, creating this sort of critic relationship with someone that brings them to shame. And shame is, of every emotion, the most the most unfriendly to change, believe it or not. We use shame to try to incite change, and culturally we do that, and individually. And it's, I think Howie's, in my view, it is both harmful individually and societally, and it doesn't actually work. I mean, the research would suggest that it just steals you in your position and makes you more aggressive as opposed to opening you. So those are all ways that we can destroy the possibility of change.
So good. Here's something that happened in the Kaufman home last night. We were putting up holiday decorations because my daughter's like, you can never start too early. Okay. And they're coming down from the steps, 12 and 10-year-old. And my 10-year-old, I said, hey, thank you for being careful coming down the steps from the attic down. And he gets down, he goes, hey, Dad, something I notice. Sometimes you'll say thank you to give me a hint, or to, instead of give me a definite direction. So I feel, Peter, based on what you just said, I feel like sometimes I go so far the other way to avoid the shame, it might be just as toxic or ineffective, right? And so we're trying to get change by dropping these hints. Yeah, right?
100%. And that's why I'm saying, like, giving someone a compliment can be as damaging as giving them a criticism, because it speaks. And I love the wisdom of 10 and 12-year-olds like that. Like, I love that. And I love how he gave you the feedback. And when he gave you that feedback, you might have been a little bit like, hey, wait, like, hey, Dad, I'm going to share some feedback with you. When my, I've learned so much from my now 19-year-old daughter. But, I think I'm so good at this stuff, and I write books about it and everything. And I struggle with my family sometimes with this stuff, because that's, those are Howie and I just spoke to a group of coaches. And one of the things I said is, we wrote this book so coaches could learn to use their coaching on the people they're not coaching. Because we could be very, very good at using it with the people we're coaching, and then not so good to use it with other people. But she would say to me, hey, Dad, when you say X and X, like, it really makes me feel bad about myself. And I'm like, oh man, thank you for being articulate about this. And you're totally right. Yeah. And if only people, who are not in our families gave us feedback so elegantly.
Well, and I feel like you do a good job in the book of making it clear, like, be clear. I mean, like, be clear. I will never think of the sandwich approach ever again as a good idea. Say something good and then whack them and then end with something good. Like that may be memorable, but your process is so much more effective, of trying to get it across. So here, let me just summarize what I took away from the book. You guys can tell me if I, read appropriately, but people change when they choose to change. But if they think we're trying to make them change, forget about it, right? That's not going to work. So we can help by going from critic to being an ally, right? Then we get them to shift from the problem to the outcome, which I thought was brilliant. And then we go back to the problem, if I remember right. And what are the opportunities? Brainstorm. And there might be some surprising ways that we might identify some things that we wouldn't have if we wouldn't have thought about the outcome. And then we got to put together a plan that they generate and refine, but eventually they commit to. Right. So is that pretty close to
that is the best synopsis of the 4 steps. And by the way, far more efficient than had you asked us to describe the 4 steps.
Well, I'm gonna actually have you illustrate these. Okay. So here's what I think is, I love how you allow us to peer into the conversation. So I'd love if you're up for this. Of course, I guess you can't say no at this point. But if I give you a scenario, all right. So Peter, there's gonna be one scenario of I'm going to be complaining to you about my boss. Okay. And I'd love for you to kind of help me through this. And then a second one is, Howie, I'm looking to drop 20 to 30 pounds, but I can't do it, man. I can't do it. And so if you guys are up for this, I'd love to at least try this out, and you can decide how detailed you want to, but feel free to freeze frame every once in a while and go, all right, what I just did there was.
Yeah. And I almost like to add to the challenge and to the fun of this.
Yeah.
Howie, you want to switch roles? Like, you take the executive coaching role and I'll take the health coaching role, because you're also an executive coach.
Well, that's a good point.
So I mean, if you don't mind, Andy, why don't we do that?
Absolutely. Right. And you can be the unibrain too, if you want. So if you'll feel free.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe we'll interrupt each other and say, this is what we've done.
I like it. Okay.
Right.
So here,
I'm just gonna get my notes on the book.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, so here's my first scenario. I'm coming up to you guys because you're trusted colleagues here, and I gotta tell you, I'm gonna call my boss Cindy. Okay, guys, she is out to get me. I just feel like there's nothing I can do to make her happy, and then she's just mean about it. I mean, she told me today I'm just not tough enough on my team. Can you believe that?
Okay, so I'm a colleague of yours, right?
Right.
I don't. You don't report to me. We're just shooting the breeze.
Yeah, that's a water cooler whining.
Right. Okay. So the first thing I'd say is I want to think about what I've just heard and categorize it as it's a complaint.
Right.
Yeah. So I haven't heard anything.
You're not. Just to be clear, you're not saying this to him. You're saying this in your head.
I'm actually saying it to him.
No, you're saying that to him, but I'm saying Howie.
Right. Oh, right.
You're talking to him.
Yeah.
You're just telling people, this is how I'm organizing my thoughts in my head.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Perfect.
Yeah. Right. I should have a freeze frame hat on.
Right.
Or I should have a second camera, right?
Right.
Camera 2.
Howie with the wig on. Howie with.
We could do the wavy focus thing where like it brings you to a different time period.
Oh man, yeah. Oh, that's funny.
Wait, I do have a. Okay.
But that's a good point. It's a difference if it's a complaint versus something else. Yeah. Okay. That's
right. Because I want to think about. So this is too. I want to think about what are you asking of me?
Mm-hmm.
So you could have come and said, "Hey, I need help dealing with Cindy."
Right. Which
is a different start to the conversation.
Well said.
You could have said, "Can you go talk to Cindy for me? She's driving me crazy." You could, but what you said was basically a complaint. Yeah. There's something you don't like, but you haven't expressed any desire to do anything about it or any ideas. So Peter and I are working on an article about this right now that we kind of recoil at complaining in this culture. We think of it as sort of wussy and weak and bad mindset, and complain all you want. And here's the world's smallest violin and all that. And so we can start to judge someone for complaining. And instead, what we came to in the writing of the book is that a complaint is actually a silver platter opportunity to, if there's, especially if I already think there's things that I want to change about you, Andy, right? As you know, just we've been working together and I just haven't, come to you. I haven't given you the sandwich.
Right.
I've just been sort of like, minding my own business, but, maybe there's ways in which I see you as not being assertive enough,
Right.
for example. And here, your boss tells you you're not assertive enough with your team, and you're telling me you're not assertive enough with your boss. So there's certain, so now I'm thinking like, okay, so I have a silver platter opportunity to help you. And the question is, what do I want to help you with? And so what Peter's saying earlier about like, we don't do it for ourselves. So I don't know how you should be. I don't know what kind of change I want you to make in particular, but we talk about the 4 characteristics, the 4 powers that someone needs in order to change. So I want to increase your ownership over this issue and, by default in general. I want to help you increase your independent capability. I want you to develop your emotional courage muscle. And I want you to become future-proofed so that when similar or more difficult things happen in the future, you can handle them too. Like that's what I want for you. And that's really how I'm coming at as an ally.
Yeah.
So from there, I might start with, and this is all, this is like that book where like the person's falling from the 3rd floor and they're just like, it's been 30 pages and now they're on the 2nd floor. Like this is all happening in like a split second in my head.
Right. Yeah.
Right? But I want to check in, make sure that
I don't know that book. Is it a book where someone's falling down 30 floors?
Actually,
in slow motion, but in reality, it's like a half second, but in slow motion.
In fact, my freshman roommate in college wrote that book. I'll tell you about it.
Okay. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I want to make sure that if I have judgments about you, right? You're kind of a wimp about this, right? That I don't pollute the conversation with those judgments. And I may feel a little bit guilty about having those judgments. So the first thing I want to do is get in touch with what's my own positive intent here? What do I want for you, for myself? And I want you to be powerful. I want you to be comfortable. I want you to be able to represent yourself well, to be comfortable in productive conflict, right? I want you to grow into your power. That's fine. That's a good thing. Now I'm saying like, what's the positive intent behind what you're doing? Well, all I've seen you do in this conversation is you've complained. So you're upset about something. You want things to be better, right? You want to have a better relationship with your boss. You want to be more involved. You want to have a greater sense of alignment and belonging above you and below you in the organizational hierarchy. And, it sounds like by not being conflictual, I'm just going to take a guess that you're a peacemaker. You like to make people happy. That's also a great thing. I would rather be surrounded by people who want to make other people happy than the opposite. So now in my mind, I've sort of done my housekeeping. So when you say you can't change other people, you can only change yourself, I'd say you can change other people, but first you have to change yourself.
Okay.
So from there, the first thing I'm going to do is empathize, right? Instead of saying, well, let's solve this, right? That's kind of jarring and dismissive. So I might say, boy, that sounds really frustrating. That must have been really hard to hear.
You're right, Howie. It sucked, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see you're taking this really hard. You're usually so, upbeat and you really seem down right now. That's tough.
Yeah, it's been a hard day. Yeah.
And you know what? Can I share something else? Like I've known you for a while and I've known you to like really develop great relationships with the people around you. You're like one of the friendliest guys on campus, honestly. Would you like to think this through with me? Would you like to think this through together?
Just a quick time on it. I love that transition that you talk about in the book, because you know where I fail on this one is I'll get on the whole empathy train and just leave it at I can't remember what you call it, but it's, sticking at the empathy. And we never get to the, how do we start transitioning to the invitation to have something about it. So I thought that was really well done there. So Howie, I think I'd be inclined to, well, I don't know. Yeah. Like you did it in such a way wasn't, hey, can I give you some feedback, bucko? Yeah. So yeah, well done there, Howie. So let's say I'm open to it. So
Yeah. So the next, Peter, you sure want? Let's go back and forth on this.
Yeah.
All right, but I'm kind of having fun listening to this, but I can't. Okay.
Yeah.
So the empathy piece is the critical piece here, right?
Right.
And I've empathized so that you now don't feel like you feel like we're on the same side, and we are on the same side, and then you say yes and think about it. So then my question is, a very simple question: what's the outcome you want? Like, what's the outcome you're going for?
I think I'd just like to have, I'd like to not be afraid when I go into the meetings with her. I just feel like she's against me. I don't want her against me, Peter. I think that's what I want. I don't want her against me.
Right. And so those are two different things. Like, I don't want to be afraid when I go in, and I don't want her against me. What would it give you if you weren't afraid? Like, you don't want to be afraid for the sake of what?
Well, like maybe I'm going to make a mistake, or I'll look bad in front of my peers maybe, or I guess when it comes down to it, I feel like I'm going nowhere in my career if she's there. So it's maybe what I'm looking for is to make sure I don't get sidelined.
Yeah. So it sounds like I'm going to raise the bar for you a little bit, which is you want success in your career, meaning what you want is to feel like you're moving forward in your career.
Yeah. That's it.
And what does that look like for you?
Well, I feel like I could go one more level up and still feel good. So I feel like that's the case, but I don't think I'm going to get the opportunity with her. I think she's out to get me, Peter.
So the outcome then that you want is and we'll figure out her in a second, but the outcome you want is to get promoted, to move forward a level. And I'm going to ask you just one more time, because I'm sort of curious, for the sake of what? Why do you want to move up a level?
Well, I feel like if I do it, I can make a difference. So I really feel like I can help our products and the way we, some ideas on how to treat people, and how to value people. I feel like I would like that challenge career-wise.
All right. And you have the ideas, so you feel like you've got ideas as to how to make some things better, how to help people, and how to, both, I guess, in terms of the product, but in terms of maybe the way people are working. But you feel like you've got some ideas that you want an opportunity to implement, to get out there, to impact. And so ideally the outcome is you're in a position to be able to make a difference and impact. And one of the ways you want to do that is to get promoted. But what I hear underneath that is it's like for the sake of being able to make an impact, and you really want to be able to make the impact.
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Yeah. Great. How do you feel? Does that energize you? Does it?
Oh man, for sure. About that? And just a quick freeze frame. You didn't take the bait on me trying to go back to about Cindy. And I thought that was so masterful. And if people read the book, they'll see it. Like, there's so many opportunities to get distracted from really going down his path. And Peter, it's almost like you practice.
You're a great participant in this because you didn't make it easy. Right. You stayed with the negative.
I read your books,
which is very common, right? If you're, I haven't just snapped you out of your negativity by empathizing. You're still down. You're still worried about the problem. Yeah. So it may take a while of these sorts of questions for the sake of what, which is, it's got to be meaningful. It has to be positive. Right. So like when Peter said, well, if you weren't afraid, what would that get you? Switching to the positivity, and then clarity. So what would that look like?
Right.
And once we have all three of those, now, and then we can tell, we look in your eyes and you're like, oh, you're flexing a little bit.
Yeah. And I look at your eyes and realize you're not against me. You're not trying to, shove something on me it's just, it's a beautiful process. I'd actually love to go through the rest of it, but I'm wondering if we just cut it there and jump to the weight loss one, and assuming that you've come off as an ally, you've gotten me to a point where maybe even is 20 to 30 pounds the right goal, right? So, I mean,
so let's talk for a second about the outcome. What's the outcome you want with the weight loss?
Yeah. I just feel like I'm trying not to use the idea in the book. So I feel like I don't have the energy. I guess I'll go with that one. I just feel like I have less energy, as I'm getting older, guys. I can't run anymore. Like, I swim and bike, but I feel like I can't run anymore because I'm carrying too much on my knees.
All right. So the outcome you want is?
I want to be able to run a 10K.
Great. For the sake of what? Like why?
Maybe I won't feel like I'm getting old. maybe I'll feel like I'm healthier.
That's interesting. So what you really want, it sounds like, is you want to feel like strong and healthy, physically fit.
Yeah. I want to be around for my kids. There's, my youngest are still 12 and 10, and they're in their 18. I want to be able to, go play ultimate Frisbee with them, to make a Howie line. I know. Yeah.
No, that's great. That's great. So you want to have the, you really want the kind of energy that allows you to be energetically engaged with your kids.
That's really what it comes down to. Yeah.
That's great. Good for you. Yeah. All right. Great.
But I can't. I've tried, Peter. Like, I'm not 20 years old anymore. When I was 25, I could just boom, and they'd be gone.
And you meaning you can't keep up with them? Like you
I know I can't lose weight, man.
You can't lose weight. You can't lose weight.
You know how it works. When you get older, you can't do it, So
got it. Okay. So let's go back to that, right? So we know what the outcome is. Like the outcome that energizes you is you want to be sort of engaged, energetically, enthusiastically engaged, physically engaged with your kids, keeping up with them. And so the problem is you're carrying this extra 20 to 30 pounds. And that's getting in the way.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And tell me what you've tried.
Well, I tried that periodic fasting thing, where you don't eat from, like 8 o'clock at night intermittent fasting. Yeah. And it worked intermittently, it worked for I dropped like 5 pounds and I got them back. By
the way, I tried that also, and I dropped 5 pounds during the day, and then I gained 10 pounds a night.
Right, exactly.
Again. Right. Yeah, that was my experience too.
Yeah, I've tried just cutting out things. Like, all right, no cereal for like a week or so. And I got to tell you, there were times like if I cut out cereal and if I, not like no carb sort of stuff, because I heard Howie wrote a book about that. But it's like, but I was like maybe cut less bread and less cereal, because at night, sometimes, Peter, I'll get like 3 bowls of cereal and I'll pound them and So
I'm curious about that too. So what is happening? What are your what's currently going on? Like why are you carrying this extra 20 to 30 pounds? What are the habits that are?
You know what? During COVID, I've gotten so busy. I'm standing in front of a camera all the time, and I just feel like I'm not getting out and exercising like I used to. And I feel like after I'm teaching a session at night, I'm just kind of hungry and tired, and so I'll just like shovel in the, extra sandwich or things like that.
So you're hungry and you're tired, and at the point at which you're driving yourself really fast and you're hungry and you're tired, then you eat in a way that it gives you energy, that it makes you feel better, what's the eating doing for you in that moment?
I probably don't even think it through. I think it's as much habit, and maybe just, I'm done teaching, so I'm going to have a sandwich. It's probably more out of habit than anything, but maybe I just feel better somehow, or I think I do. Yeah.
Can I offer a freeze frame here? It's just what I've noticed.
Yeah.
So what has happened is you started out, Andy, with an excuse, right? Like I can't lose weight. I'm too old, right? Like, you know how it is, right? Peter didn't argue with it, and he didn't collude with it. He just asked specific questions and immediately got you to, I pound 3 bowls of cereal at night. Right. So you're hearing yourself. So you're immediately good, like gaining some agency. You're like, okay, there are places where I do have leverage.
Yeah.
And part of the continuation of the conversation is, instead of Peter rubbing your nose in it, like, Andy, you're full of it here. Right. For you to sort of gently see, oh, so my hopelessness comes from a very limited perspective. And when I increase my perspective, now I have all these, like, you already have a bunch of things you could think about doing now.
Yeah. You've led me to more ownership and independent capability, I think. Right. Or at least the ownership. Like, I have some, this is not just nature, and like I have some play in this.
Well, and yeah, I love that, Howie. Thank you for pointing that out. And I'll tell you where my head's going. There's two things that I'm noticing that are going on.
Yeah.
Two things that you're actually very good at, that you may not realize you're very good at because they don't seem like they're very good things.
Yeah.
One is you're very good at, and maybe this isn't right because you sort of said it's actually this pattern thing versus this, replenishment thing, but you're very good at like working very hard and then giving yourself some comfort afterwards. Like you're good at that already. Like you're good at that. You find the comfort in the food, but you're good at that. You're good at like pushing yourself really, really hard and then realizing, oh, I need something to slow myself down, to give myself some comfort, and that's food. That's the thing. But what I hear is, okay, he's like the food in your view might be dysfunctional, right? It might be leading to the weight gain. But what I hear is, hey, he's good at comforting himself after really hard work. I'm putting that aside. I have that in my head.
Right.
The second thing that I hear that you're really good at is habitually following behavior without thinking about it. That's also really great. Like there's usefulness in that, right? So with both of those are two behaviors that you're good at. And you might think critically of them right now. Like you might think, oh, this is really bad. I act without thinking and I eat emotionally. But what I'm hearing and in this conversation is there's opportunities because you're tired and you're finding comfort and you're able to follow behavior without getting your head involved in it too much. So those are opportunities to go. So where there are opportunities, there's opportunities to find comfort for yourself at times when you're tired, right? And you've noticed it, those things you've noticed. So it's kind of like, what else could you do? And I'm shortcutting this process a little bit because of time, but what else can you do that would give you comfort at the end of the day that doesn't involve eating 3 bowls of ice cream? Like what, a hot bath, lying down, meditating, playing with your kids, playing with your wife, like whatever it is that you're doing, right? Or spouse or partner, I don't know your situation. And then the other is to say, what patterned behavior might you integrate at that moment of the day? Because you've identified like a great, beautiful opportunity, which is there is this window in which I overeat. It is after work and it is, and so great. So now we know the window and now sort of what's the opportunity to repattern that habitual non-mindful behavior. I'm not saying like, oh, now get really mindful about it, Andy. I mean, that might be fine. But, mindfulness might not be the right thing for you. Maybe the right thing is automatic behavior, but automatically eat, 6 cups of air popped popcorn. And, you get to act mindlessly and it's not going to gain the weight for you.
Yeah. And if we had longer, we could go into all the steps. I just want to give people a taste because I don't think there's an easy step through all of it. But if we screw up the first 2 steps, the rest of it is gone, right? And so screw up is maybe not the right implication, but if we struggle getting past just coming off as a critic, if we struggle understanding the outcome, how do we help somebody else do it? And in the book of trying to say, all right, how do we look for the opportunities, which is where you're going there, and then how do we get them to kind of identify, what's worked and not worked, and then come up with a plan where they feel like not like 7 out of 10. But like 8 or 9 or 10 out of 10, they feel like they can do it. So in the book, it just, there's so many ways to see that. But, Howie, in your experience, where are some of the places where people get stuck in that? I mean, I imagine there's places everywhere to get stuck, but in your experience, like where is it?
By the way, I want to give Howie a second to think about this. And I just want to point out one more thing, because I'm constantly in the coach mode, which is one of the things that I missed that, like what we would uncover is go back to your outcome. Your outcome is so that you have plenty of energy to play with your kids. Mm-hmm. So now we have this thing you're doing mindlessly, which is eating by yourself, bowls of cereal. Meanwhile, your kids are in the other room. Right. And like, maybe we integrate these. Yes. Like, what about you cook healthy with your kids and you spend an hour instead of eating, being with your kids and cooking.
Go for a walk with the kids.
That outcome is like integrated already. You don't have to lose the weight in order to get there, but that doesn't mean that you don't also lose the weight. So it really focused on the outcome. Okay,
I love
just
it.
wanted to say that.
That's good.
Howie.
That's good.
Good. You bought me just enough time to come up with a reasonable answer, which is one of the things that Peter does so well and has trained me to do. Is it's very easy. So once we've gotten over our emotional stuff and we're like, okay, I'm really an ally, then it's easy to get tripped up by believing the other person's story in generalities. Because like, Andy, you have so many blind spots when it comes to this that you shared at the very beginning, like, oh, I can't lose weight because people can't lose weight, right? We have a story. And it's the story of our problem that keeps us from moving forward, because the story precludes all sorts of possibilities of action, because this is how I am, this is how things are, this is how the other person is. And the stories are almost always limiting. So and it's easy to buy into those stories because they've told you a good story, right? Like when you tell me about Cindy, I'm like, oh, I hate Cindy already. Right. Right. So what Peter has been so brilliant in doing and teaching and encapsulating is what he calls the FAST assessment, which is to really like to ask questions about the specifics of a moment. So the FAST stands for what are you feeling? How are you acting? What are you saying and doing? What are you thinking? Or I think that's sort of right. I sort of changed it for my world, but right. So this, when you start talking about the specifics of what am I doing? I'm sitting alone. Then all of a sudden, all these thoughts occur, not just to Peter, because he's a brilliant coach, but they're occurring to you as well. Like, oh, when I hear myself say that, then you get to question your own story. Right. So one of the, so to riff on what Peter was saying about this opportunity to play with your kids. So one of the challenges is in that moment when you are going to be really craving the happy food that's going to give you that quick hit, you're going to have to fight it. Right. It's not like, oh, just go do something else. Like you can shift it and you can, develop the new habit. It's going to take attention and time and energy and failing and succeeding. But what I would say is like the energy, an opportunity for me is you have this energy of value you expressed of, I want to be vibrant. And so in that moment, it seems like you're being the opposite of vibrant. You're being a passive consumer of something that you don't even want, really. So instead of like, if you want to, like you started out, I want to lose 20 pounds. Well, you're not going to lose 20 pounds for a while, whether it's a month or 3 months or a year, that's in the future. And the bowls of cereal that are going to make you happy are in the now. So I say there's an opportunity to really connect with that core value of, I want to be a vibrant person for my whole life. How do I bring that into this moment? What does that look like?
Yeah, I love the continual focus in the book of let's get back to the outcome. Let's get back to the outcome. And let me just kind of move towards this, because I think it'd be easy for anyone listening to us say, well, if I was the number one executive coach in the world, Peter Bregman, or if I was, that handsome Howie Jacobson, PhD, I could see this working, but I'm not them. So what are some success stories where you've seen clients use these ideas to make real and substantial changes? Peter, let's start with you. And Howie, do you have a favorite story? I want people to feel inspired. They can do this.
Yeah, there's so many stories. And one of the ways, and one of the things that we say in the book, and one of the ways that we wanted to use the book is to say to people, you're not playing a trick on someone. You're not pretending you're not using a process. Be transparent. Like what we say is tell someone like, hey, I'm reading this book. I'd like to sort of use it to support this, and there's like, that's why we wrote it with dialogues and do's and don'ts and things like that. Yeah. But, it's the 4 steps feel maybe overwhelming if you're just listening to this conversation. They're very, very simple, right? It's like, be an ally, identify the outcome, find the opportunity, and then execute a plan. Yeah. So an example would be, and I use this example in the book, Brian Gaffney, who was the CEO of Allianz Global Distributor, who the company was losing $30 million. And over a few years, he turned that into a gain of, annual profit of 140 million. And he did that with the same executive team that was there beforehand. Awesome. And the way he did it was by using process, right? And to be able to say, okay, I want these people to be successful. I'm not here to criticize them or to give them feedback about what they're doing wrong. You know, feedback is our corporate version of, you know, constructive criticism is our version of just like being a critic. Mm-hmm. And it, you know, there's a lot of evidence that suggests it does not actually help people get better. What we need in organizations is a process to help people get better, not a process to point out their deficiencies. What we have is a process to point out their deficiencies. And then we outsource getting better to, I don't know what, like a training course. But the reality is we have to become better as managers, project managers, you know, individual managers and organizations. We have to become better at using a process with people, not just that points out deficiencies, but that improves the performance, improves the system. Like we have to be the system that's improving. So it's about being an ally and saying what I want is for these people to succeed. And then the second step is to then, you know, engage with them around the process like this, right? Which is, what's the outcome you want? Not just what I want. Of course, what I want is for us to turn this company around. What do you want? You know, and very few people are going to say, I want to drive this company into the ground. That's my goal. Like, that's what I'm going for. That's my, you know, I want to do that. And then I want to move to another company and do it there. Right. No, that's not what people are thinking. So, you know, trust them. Like they want to succeed too. So to say, what's the outcome you want? Well, you know, I mean, it could be just like the role play that you did. Like, I want to succeed. Great. For the sake of what? Or like in what way? Or how do you want to succeed? Like, you know, and let's help them to be successful. I was talking with Hubert Joly, who is the CEO of Best Buy. He did a massive turnaround at Best Buy. And he was talking about one of his managers who created a dream board. And this is managers like on retail floors, right? This is not like high-level executive employees. And he basically said, I'm your manager and my job is to help you achieve your dreams in life. Like, that's my job. Like I have this, you know, space that I can impact right now, but it's not just about that. My job is to help you achieve your dreams. So everybody put your dreams up there. I want to know what they are, and I want to figure out how I can help you. You know, so it's the same kind of thing.
Instant ally signaling, right? I'm here.
Right. That's what we're here for. And if we're not, by the way, if we're not here for that, like life becomes less rich, right? And it doesn't mean that I'm going to give up on, you know, the alignment with organizational outcomes or values or like all of that is important. But it's, you know, I just gave a speech early this morning about like finding that intersection between your sweet spot and the organization's needs. Like there's a context in which we all operate and there is a place in which we are our best. And so like that's where it's used really effectively, to then be able to sit down with people and say, all right, we've got this, what I call the big arrow, right? But we've got this, you know, ultimate thing we need to achieve as an organization. And now let's work together to get there.
So good. I don't know how you've probably got all kinds of stories through your coaching of people have made changes by doing this, but do you have a favorite one there, Howie?
I do, and unfortunately, I'm looking at the time, and I hate to do this. I have to jump off.
Okay, yeah, no problem. I totally get it. I'll edit that part out. I totally. But let me wrap it up with this. Hey, you know what? I'll end it with like where Peter ended up there. So, well, thank you, Peter. You know, for those listening, I have to tell you, Peter and Howie convinced me in this book that we truly can help people change. I highly recommend you get a copy of their book. You Can Change Other People. I put links to the book and the Bregman Partners website in the show notes of this cast. So guys, thank you for joining me on the People and Projects podcast.
So great being with you. Thanks, Andy.
Wow. This is my favorite podcast.